arrow beside mic.
Yes, yes. I see it now. It wasn't there before. I think I was on a different. So now it's scrolling.
Yeah, you can, once you click on that, you can see two windows. That is share screen and select PDF file. Click on share screen.
Okay, share. It's spinning. When I was in the backstage, it was working, but now it's not working. And it shows that.
Yeah, did you get the option to share the screen?
It did, yes. So here, screen 1, share. And then it says, oh, it's spinning. It says there seems to be something wrong with the browser, but there isn't, because I followed the instructions for it to be able to share with Google Chrome. And like I said, in the backstage, it was working, but now it's not working.
Once you click on this share screen, you can see two windows, that is share screen and select PDF file. So once you click on this share screen, you can see three tabs, Chrome browser, Windows. Did you see that?
Yes.
Where is your PDF? Is it in Chrome browser or Windows or desktop?
It's in a PDF, a PowerPoint.
In which folder it is there? In your desktop?
It's on my desktop, yes. So
click on the desktop. Okay, if not, if you are not able to do, can you please send your PowerPoint presentation to contact@redpinconferences.com?
Send it to you? Sure. An email or how?
Yeah, you can email. I'll put it in the chat. Can you see?
Okay, let's see.
Did you receive the email?
Yeah, I see it there. Okay, one moment.
Please send your presentation to that email.
Sure.
We can share from our side.
Sure. Okay. It's loading. One moment. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so contact.
Have you sent an email to us?
Not yet. Not yet. One moment.
Can you hear me?
One moment.
I think you have no network, no proper network. Have you sent an email, Márta?
Not yet. I'm attaching it right now. It's just taking a little while because of the system, so it's not as fast as
your network is not stable. I can see that.
It's what?
Your network is not stable.
Okay. It's momentarily coming. Sorry.
Yeah, have you sent an email, Martha?
No, it still hasn't attached. I'm telling you, it's quite slow for some reason. It's coming though. Thank you for your patience. Here we go.
Is it attached? Is your presentation attached?
Yes. All right. I just sent it.
I think we are running already 30 minutes late. I know sometimes technology will trouble. Um, yeah, without, is it possible for you to do without presentation?
It's not as efficient
You
because
can
I have.
you can open in your desktop and you can talk. Can you talk like that? Because we are not able to send to our email address and it is not the share screen is not coming up, right? So it's been almost 10 minutes late.
Okay, now it's working. Well, that's great. Huh. Okay. Can you see my screen? Jacqueline, thank you. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Not sure whose end it's on, but either way, we are going to get started. Okay, so you can see my screen. Wonderful. All right, well, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me on today's presentation. My name is Márta Vajda. I am super thrilled to be presenting on this topic at the 4th Global Women's Empowerment and Women's Influencers Network Summit to share insights about a topic that is quite dear and near to my heart as an educator, as a researcher, as a woman as well, dedicated to the well-being of other women as we help ourselves and then help other women as well with their superior flourishing, both professionally and personally. So as you see on the title here, today's presentation will be focusing on harnessing our values for goal setting, breaking our boundaries that we might perceive as boundaries, and being able to achieve our goals by applying values to our goal-oriented strategies. So a little information about me. I'm an educational consultant, as Melinda introduced. I work with high school students and their families in providing clarity, ease, and care, the values that I imbue in the ever-changing landscape of college admissions in the United States. As an ADHD coach, I help high school, college students, and creative adults really find ways to manage their ADHD, which stands for the Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, and really help them develop non-medicated behavioral changes to make lifelong, long-term changes to their lives ultimately. So whether that's helping them with better organizational skills, time management skills, task-initiated self-directed goals, the whole gamut as it relates to really making positive lifestyle changes to help manage their ADHD symptoms. I'm also a doctoral candidate at Florida Atlantic University, where I study we're in the field of curriculum and instruction, where I study college access, higher ed, and really ensuring that students have resources necessary to move towards their goals without major impediments. And my practice as an educator and a coach has always really been driven by values-based principles. So what that means is really I've been using them to explain my influence in education, continually evaluating and enhancing my methods as a consultant and as a coach to deliver the best support and services and encouragement and in resources for my students. And so some of my most recent studies have been both in the ADHD world and in the world of living education theory. One you can see here is I Can Stop Doubting Myself, where I did an action research study on students, ADHD college students' experiences from ADHD coaching, the link of which can be accessed through scanning the QR code. And then another really beautiful project that I just did with a cohort of my colleagues and a wonderful mentor within the university, where we were analyzing our values, which ended up being care in academia. And we explored the role that our values-led practices impacted our experience in our doctoral program, but also impacted the very students that we work with day in and day out. So that was a study that we presented at some conferences, and we're also about to present that in Sweden next week. So in looking at today's agenda, the theme of today is redefining boundaries, empowering women, and inspiring influence. So in today's agenda, I wanted to share some valuable tools that our audience, fellow educators, professionals, students perhaps as well, that put to practical use strategies that can help them redefine their boundaries to empower themselves and to make lasting change in the lives of other women and children, younger and older, to really align those goals with intrinsic values to achieve success with true purpose and what I would say true clarity. So in today's agenda, we'll look at living educational theory, a powerful tool, powerful theoretical base that really helps us navigate our values. We'll look at discovering our values through values timeline. Values cards as well. It's another great tool to use to identify the values that you hold dear. And then looking at values-based goal setting, which will take the values that you've identified and then being able to apply them in ways that really make your goals more attainable rather than just an abstract thought. So a little background about living educational theory. Super excited to explore this because, again, this was a recent study that we just did, and it really does build on the foundational tools about how values set meaningful and actionable goals in our lives if we use them appropriately. So it's all about creating an educational explanation for how we influence our own learning and the learning of others. It's rooted in reflecting our core values. So you might ask yourself, what principles guide my decisions? How do I evaluate whether I'm improving? It's really a self-reflection as an essential tool because it allows us to ground our goals in what truly matters to us, rather than just aiming for some external achievement. So again, this way we align our goals with our deeper values and our deeper intentions. And this book, in fact, by Jacqueline DeLong and Jack Whitehead, really was the impetus for our cohort to develop our own values and work together in ensuring that we create a culture of inquiry where we support each other in the ways that our values are manifested in our own fields. And it's a fantastic book. It's really about conducting values-based inquiry for human flourishing. So a lot of students use it if they're moving in that direction. But I also highly recommend it for educators, professionals as well, if they're looking to really tap into the values that are important to them to, again, achieve certain goals. So as an example, let's say your value is connection in your personal and your professional life. As you sit down and start thinking about setting goals, you can integrate the value of connection into how you pursue them. So instead of working in isolation, you might prioritize collaboration. You might seek mentors that have experience in the particular field that you're going to embark on. You might create a supportive network. In ADHD coaching, for example, we have a supportive network called body doubling, which is kind of a fancy term to say co-working. And students or adults who might find it difficult to accomplish certain day-to-day tasks will body double or co-work within a community, whether it's virtual or in person, to make gains on their particular tasks for the day or their short or long-term goals. So if a value of yours is connection, then you might consider any of these points and creating a supportive network to move you towards the practical tools and the influence of structure towards your goals rather than just having it as an abstract idea. One of the strengths of living educational theory is the practice of ongoing evaluation. As we consider pursuing our goals, we need to regularly check in with ourselves. So you might ask yourself, am I still aligned with my core values as you're working towards a particular goal? Or are these strategies serving both my goals and my growth simultaneously? The continuous reflection allows for flexibility and course correction, keeping our efforts truly meaningful and sustainable. So, living educational theory can ground our approach to using values in our goals, but ultimately, let's talk about it. What are our values? So, let's put this into action. According to Wilson, 2009, page 66, values can be defined as freely chosen, verbally constructed consequences of ongoing, dynamic, evolving patterns of activity, which establish predominant reinforcers for that activity that are intrinsic in engagement in the valued behavioral pattern itself. A lot of words, fancy words, but it is in fact beautifully said because simply put, values ultimately reflect what we want to be doing with our lives. They are chosen consequences that can in fact never quite be fulfilled, right? Because they in fact direct behavior, whereas goals which are achievable cannot, where goals which are achievable, the values cannot be achieved. So here's an example. The value of being creative. I'm an abstract artist, right? So when I create a piece, the act of being creative is never actually fully fulfilled. Because if I create a piece, then yes, that piece might be done, but I'm not really going to say, now that I've created this painting, I've accomplished creativity and will proceed with the next thing, right? So values instead can be more identifiable when we formulate them as verbs. So they're not something that is fully achieved, but being creative might be a value that you then work towards by applying certain goals to achieve those goals. So value congruence is the extent to which our behaviors are consistent with our stated value. So how can we think about our values? How can we discover what those values are? One way is actually through the values timeline. There's many different ways, but I like this one in particular because it puts us on the timeline of our stage in life. So researchers have traditionally assumed that once our values are acquired, that they remain stable and they're enduring over time. But in fact, in the past 20, 30 years, it actually has been suggested that values do indeed change as a function of age and as a function of changing roles and environmental requirements. All of those things that are kind of associated with life changes, marriage, widowhood, child rearing, professional navigation, changes in career as well. So the value that one places on different areas of life seems to change over their lifespan, often in response to important life events. And those life events are oftentimes considered turning points, after which we as individuals shift our priorities on what actually matters from the stage that we're in. So this particular timeline and the subsequent ones that I'm going to share with you are all from the Positive Psychology Toolkit, which also feeds a little bit into the concept of living educational theory because it's really focusing on providing human flourishing and well-being and empowerment. So a lot of these tools you'll see are really grounded in these positive elements that can make our world better and make ourselves better within our world as well. So here's a list of the values. As I mentioned before, some of these values obviously are verb oriented, or some of them are nouns like creativity or learning, magnificence, making a difference, excellence, excitement. There's quite a long list of values that can be tapped into. And I'll go over in the next slide ways that you can kind of tap into your own values at the different stages in your life. So as you create your own individual values, I encourage you to reflect on the values and changes in where you are. So the idea is truly to experience and become aware of the dynamic nature of your values, recognizing that they are not static and that you actually do have the power to adjust or to change them as you deem fit. So the top portion, as you'll see, the timeline, you can either take a picture of it or find it on positivepsychology.com and create space underneath it. So you can take it, print it out, and then take a paper and a pen for your notes as well. And now we'll just go through the steps that it takes to identify your values while using this timeline feature. So step 1, identify your current stage of life. Pretty simple. Step 2, clarify your top 5 values. So think about what you value most at this stage of your life. What are the most important things to you right now? What matters to you? Using the previous list that I shared, you can come up with your top 5 core values, and then you can use them along with the spreadsheet of the timeline to list those values underneath the stage that you are currently in. Step 3 would then be to clarify core values from earlier stages of your life. So you see, now we want to help you think about your values in previous life stages. You might like to close your eyes in a situation like this where you, for a moment, recall the earlier stages of your life. Think about what you were doing, who or what was important to you at that stage. What were your priorities? And then using that sheet again, come up with the 5 core values of these from your previous life stages, and then you can list them under the respective stage on that timeline. Step 4 is understanding the value of evolution over time. So now that you look across your timeline at the different values, you'll take a moment to really think about the evolution of those values over time. Are there any values that are important to you in this stage of your life and were also important to you in one or more earlier stages of your life? If so, you can list those values below. You can highlight them or make some notification that they're similar or different. Because then the next stage, step 5, you'll understand the nature of the value of the change. So you're comparing your current values with your previously held values. You think about, is there something that you notice about the nature of the values? So I'll give you an example. If your values from your 20s and 30s, or let's say your 20s, have been more freedom-oriented or more individuated or more career-oriented, and now maybe in your 30s and 40s, it's a lot more stable, maybe less travel, maybe more family-oriented, then you can see that there is a variation between it, and that's all okay. So you can take a minute to reflect on the nature of that change in your values over your lifespan, and again, write those responses in your notes as you develop these values. And then step 6, examining how well your values are serving you. So now you look at the values that you hold now. Have any of those been with you through multiple stages in life? If so, maybe you consider those long-standing values rather than short life stage values. To what extent do these values still serve you right now at this stage of your life? Is it in your interest to continue prioritizing those values, or do you need to shift those prioritizations? Again, the whole point of this is to become more aware of the stage that you're at and the values that either support or not the particular stage, so that when you're looking at your goals, we can match them appropriately for the most efficient movement towards them. So here's an example of a completed values timeline. It might look like this. As you can see, I mentioned in your 20s, excitement, adventure, career, and in your 30s and 40s, maybe family's more valuable, security, gratitude, wellness, as we're navigating more of the years towards a later part of our life. All of it, pretty relevant. And then value cards is another way that you can actually orient yourself towards your values. So typically value cards are used in coaching. They're used in more group settings, but it's perfectly fine to use them in an individual setting where you can, again, take a snapshot of this or go to the positive psychology toolkit, and you can print these out, cut them up into little cue cards, and shuffle them, and then you can create 3 separate piles for separating. So the first pile would be the values that are not very important to me. That would be your categorization. The second pile would be the values that are moderately important to me. And the third would be values of the highest importance to me. So once you've gone through these values and you've identified which category they fit into next, in the end, have a self-reflection moment. Ask yourself, or if you are in a group setting, you can use these discussion points to ask others, but ask yourself, if I were to ask 5 random people from my life, this whether or not these same core values that I picked as the highest importance, do they deem that as also? Do they see that for me as the highest importance as well? That might give a little bit of perspective. Or if it's the moderately important one, how do they perceive the values that I chose for myself in their own eyes and what they know about me and they see me doing and my behaviors? Does it match, or is there a disconnect? Again, will provide a lot of perspective. Another question you can ask yourself is, do I walk the walk or do I talk the talk when it comes to these values and the ways that I choose to live my life? If I do, then provide those examples. This is a great exercise to really tap into those values. And then now, as we move to using our values, once you have the top 5, to applying them into goal setting, once you have a clear understanding of those values by which you want to live in this stage of your life, let's commit those values to action. So awareness is in fact essential, but it means very little at the end of the day if there is no action to take by those values. So this is a sheet, again, from Positive Psychology, where you can either write it up or create it yourself or take a picture of it. But ultimately, it will help you generate feasible goals that connect to the values that you have. So the first step would be to choose a life domain. Any of these options below: work, financial, education, parenting, intimate partner, community, environment, personal growth. Choose a life domain and then put that at the top of your little worksheet here. Step 2 is desired change. Think about what you would like to change in this domain. Again, ask yourself. This is very important in any type of behavioral changes. You want to be having these questions. Really ask yourself these questions. What would I like to do differently in this area in my life? List those changes in the first column where you see the yellow arrow. Step 3, recognize the importance of this change. This is what we call in coaching your why. Why is it important for me to change these things? Once you have that listed, then you can move on to step 4. Now you can consider reasons you provide for the desired change. So for example, if you chose to work on the life domain, maybe intimate partner, you decide that you need to spend more quality time together because you love your partner, you like spending time with him or her, and spending time with him or her would create more healthy balance between work and private life. So then the values underlying these reasons might be love, positive experiences, and private balance, or work-life private balance, respectively. So you can write those down into that column on the right. And I really love this quote by Harris, 2009, that ties our values into our core self, right? So values are our heart's deepest desires for the way we want to interact with the world, other people, and ourselves. They're what we want to stand for in life, how we want to behave, what sort of person we want to be, what sort of strengths and qualities we want to develop. And here's an example of a completed form. Like I was mentioning, quality time with your partner. Why is this important to me? Spending time, more balance. And then this is the love, the positive experiences, and then the work-life private balance. And now comes the part of goal setting, wherein you will identify the SMART acronym, which I'm sure we might have heard before, where you identify the very specific ways of making your values connect with your goals. So the S is specific, right? So include in your specific goal orientation long-term goals and short-term goals. Long-term might be more abstract, more fuzzy visions of the future. Short term are going to be a little bit more direct and concrete, where so for example, a long term might be that you generally will want to spend more time with your kids. But then short term would be, I will take my kids to the park on Saturday afternoon after family time. So see how that's a little bit more specific versus just something more generic or general. Meaningful. Your values should be genuinely meaningful, and they should guide the goal instead of following a rigid rule where you might try to please others or you might try to avoid some painful situation. So you make sure that when you are setting your values to your goals, that the goal has a sense of meaning and purpose. A, for approachable, the goal should be formulated as a movement toward a specific state or an objective. Going back to that example with the private life and work balance, you could say, I will enjoy a fulfilling balance between work demands and personal relaxation. So it's moving towards that very specific goal of balancing and relaxing. And it should not, in fact, be anything that is formulated as a movement away from a desired state. So not as a negative, like you don't want to say, I will be less stressed about work, something general like that. You want it to be more positive and more oriented towards a specific goal, more concrete. Realistic, of course, your goals should be realistically achievable. When you're setting your goals, consider your current situation. So your health, consider your competing demands of your time, your financial position as well. Whether you have the skills to achieve this particular goal and the other environmental factors that might impede the progress or propel you forward. So it's important to think about it in realistic terms. And then, of course, T for time frame. The goal should be specific and should be focused on setting it up in a time that makes it move forward. So set a day, set a date, set a time for that particular goal. If it's not possible, then you can set as accurate of a time frame as you possibly can. But the more specific you can be with the time, the better it is to execute on it. And step 6 would be goal setting advice. So setting your values-based goals. Before I mentioned that you have long-term and short-term goals. So you can use a table like this one, where you can set both of those. Underneath the long-term goal, you might say something general. And then, of course, your small-term, short-term goal, you might have something a little bit more specific. And you could very easily apply this with any particular goal that you have in the next 24 hours, or as you think of things that you can do over the next few days or the next few weeks. But you can move strategically between the long-term and the short-term as well. And then 6, of course, once you've completed the long and short-term goal based on your values, take a moment to evaluate. This is self-reflection. This is a critical piece of the process, where you can ask yourself these very important questions, again, reflectively. Are these really my goals? Or is it something that someone else thinks that I should achieve? The more honest that you can be with these questions, the better it will be for you to really identify the values connected to the goals. Are these goals important to me? And if they are, then why? Do these goals excite me? Do they energize me? Do they inspire me? What will I feel as if I have gained something when I have achieved them? So that's a little wordy, I realize. So maybe you can think about it. How will I feel once I have gained that goal, or once I have achieved that particular goal? Can you visualize it? Do you feel like you would be excited? Will you be happy or not? And that also is a little bit informative about whether or not the goal that you're trying to achieve is truly authentically yours, or is something that might be perceived as important by somebody else. On a scale of 1 to 10, oops. How confident am I that I will achieve my goals? How confident am I in my motivation to achieve these goals? Another important factor. We have intrinsic and we have external motivation. So tapping into that is also helpful. How are the goals moving me in the direction of the bigger picture I have for my life? And I think that one also is really indicative of the stage of life that you are in, and how those values, again, shift to propel you forward in that stage, or might impede you if they're not the appropriate values for that particular stage. So in summary, We've learned a little bit about living educational theory and how the values principles are used as a grounding, as a framework, or even as a springboard towards your goals. You've learned a little bit about what a values timeline looks like and how we can adjust our values accordingly because it's fluid and not necessarily static as it might have been perceived before. We've learned that value cards are a useful way to identify our top 5 values and really have fun with that process too, and then take those values and apply them to goal setting. And so, as you think about your future, and as you think about, again, this theme of redefining our boundaries, empowering women, inspiring influence, I'd like you to leave with this quote, which I don't know who said it, but I do like it. It resonates quite well with me. When you lead with your values and strengths, the boundaries you once saw become opportunities. So I think that's a nice little ending to today's values-based presentation. Here are some of the references and some of my contact information with the QR codes for easy access, open to future collaborations, conversations, and of course, any inquiries to elaborate on any of these topics I'm open to having as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Márta, for the great presentation. Even though it is late, you drew the audience with your presentation. So yeah, and I learned so much from your presentation today, and not only you, so from all the speakers who have joined and shared their unique presentations with the Global Virtual Summit 2024. So hoping to join other speaker sessions as well and post some questions and share some love. So thank you so much, and please do join another speaker session, and the questions will be sent to you directly. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.